Hello everyone, and welcome back to Whiskey Wednesday. I promise you something Canadian, and I am here to deliver. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my first experience of Macaloney's, a distillery which has built a reputation on producing some very fine whiskey, as well as going toe-to-toe with the Scotch Whisky Association over the use of a name. Bit of history, because we've never really covered this on the channel before. This distillery is owned and run and sort of operated by Graeme Macaloney, and his ancestry dates back to both Scottish and Irish ancestry. He makes peated single malt whiskey, of which we'll be trying one of. He's very experimental with that. He makes unpeated single malt whiskey. He makes triple distilled single pot still whiskies. All kinds of fun experimental things. The kind of thing I want when I'm looking at new distillery. Never tried anything from them before. Are they going crazy with options, or are they just doing like one thing? I respect it either way, but I've got a lot of respect for this. This is from the Island range, I believe it's called, or the Island single malt range, and it's also called the Peat Project. I'll show you the box, because the box is pretty big. Huge box. Many facts and figures down here. I'll show you them now, so you can get a little screen grab, but I'll also just read them out as well. This uses peat from Washington State, so just on that US-Canadian border, part of the Pacific Northwest. They do all their peating in-house, which, as far as I'm aware, is quite unusual for Canadian whiskey. It's also whiskey spelt without an E. The rest of my notes, Dr. Jim Swan was involved with the distillery, called the new mixed spirit some of the best that he's ever tried. Anything that Dr. Jim Swan has touched is typically very good. And this has been produced using Washington peat and then aged in one, we'll talk about that in a minute, Portuguese ex-red wine cask. This distillery is from the southern part of Vancouver Island, just down here. And I'm a little bit disappointed because I was at the Victoria Whisky Festival in 2019 and for some reason didn't visit a distillery. We drove past two and I didn't go into any of them. I'm a moron. But here we are now with the whiskey. Now these facts and figures that are on the front of this bottle, it doesn't declare an age, which I'm fine with. It is 57% ABV. It's 54 ppm. This is cask number 164. It is bottle 181 of 201, and it was bottled in March 2023. Now, nowhere, as far as I can see, does it give you like mention of what Washington peat will do in contrast to regular peat. Even with all the blurb on this box, it doesn't really talk about the differences, but there is a range available of, there's an Oloroso maturation, a PX maturation, some other red wine maturations, and it is a single cask, just on the front there, single cask, Washington peat. So it's a first experience. It's quite an extreme first experience. Lovely colour, very dark colour. Portuguese red wine, been used a lot with a lot of distilleries. Compass Box springs to mind, as does Glenmorangie. I believe the Bacalta, Glenmorangie, no, the Bacalta, that was Madeira. The Milchorn, was it? Glenmorangie used like Portuguese red wine casks. Had like a candy stripe kind of box. Probably loads of other distilleries as well, if I'm being honest. But I know what regular West Coast Scottish peat is like. I'm aware of what Highland peat is like, and Orkney peat, and peat from Skye. They're all slightly different. So I'm intrigued to know what Washington peat brings to the mix in this. But let's smell this. Let's see what's going on. Okay, so the first thing I'm getting is the booze. 57% is not a percentage to mess around with. Oh, that's interesting. The first thing I get is orange. It's very much like, not orange oil, but like just a big old wedge of orange that you might just like chew on if you really need something hydrating. The smell of like cutting into an orange, so maybe it is a little bit of that orange oil. There's some nice fruity notes to it. It's got like a very kind of, not fruity, but the nose in it reminds me quite a bit of chamomile and like Earl Grey tea. Which again has like a soft fruitiness to it. There's like bergamot in there, stuff like that. And then you start to smell the smoke. Or the peat, I should say. And it very much has that kind of... It's not medicinal in any way. So we can rule out Isla. It's not as heathery and vanilla-y as Orkney peat is. So we can rule out that. But it does have a Highland peated thing. And with this super fruity distillate, the smoke is coming across as more of like really barbecuey, but like barbecue sauce. There's even like a note of like rum agricole to it. And to me, all agricole rum always smells like barbecue sauce or like tomato. There's that very earthy sweetness to it, which is what this has. Not getting too much of the red wine thing. It's not aggressive on the nose. I wouldn't call it abrasive or like dismissive, but it's... I feel like the smoke is kind of dominating a lot of this. In a good way. Oh, it's quite chocolatey actually. There's a nice hit there of like hot chocolate and like cocoa powder. I haven't actually tried this yet, so let's see what's going on. Ooh. Ooh, there's a lot going on. See, that is like that's a very direct, spicy, punchy, ABV driven, smoky style of single malt. And I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's really manageable. Like you think about cask strength whiskies you've tried over the years that are like really like, they just hit you straight in the face. Or some of them are really subtle. This is very much in that subtle realm. It has spice and you do taste oak and you do taste new make spirit. There is a slight vegetalness to the new make spirit that does amplify the Washington peat or that barbecuiness we get of peat. But it's really easy to drink. It's kind of frighteningly easy to drink, I'll be honest. Something that is taking me back is the smell of this smells like a warehouse. Going back to it, it's kind of damp and a bit funky and a bit dark. It smells like a dunnage warehouse. There's loads of different things happening within this glass. There's fruitiness, there's smokiness, there's barbecuiness, there's a woodiness that's come out now. Even like sweet tobacco. And it reminds me of the smell of walking through a warehouse. I will say, the fruit and this orangey thing does disappear on the palate. The palate is very much about the barley, the new mixed spirit, so they're the same thing, and this peat, which does come across as quite bitter, almost like very bitter espresso, like very heavily charred coffee beans and then espresso made from that. Charred, roasted. The orange thing is sort of still there, but it's morphing into like a Campari style of bitterness, but without the herbaceousness that comes from Campari. It's just like the bitter orange thing. And then you've got this peat, this smoke, which I think is adding an element of this charry, bitter taste. But there's also a very burnt earth, burnt herb thing that's separate from that kind of orange Campari note. It's much bigger, it's much more prevalent. It feels like it sticks to the side of my palate. You can see why this was bottled as a single barrel. It is quite unique. I don't personally know if Washington peat is the best kind of peat. It's there on the nose, and it does give you that agricole rum, barbecue sauce sort of aroma. And you do smell it on the whiskey. It's not hidden behind anything. But on the palate, I don't know if it's doing all of the things you would want a peated whiskey to do. But then again, I've never tried anything like this, so where do we sit with that? I think it's a fun experimental run. It's a good thing that it's a single barrel, because only having 201 bottles of this, if you love it, you'll source loads of it. If you don't like it, that's fine. They've got loads of other options. There is loads more peated whiskey in the world. I must say, from my first experience of it, I'm not in love. But luckily, I have this. I should have brought this over before. You are all going to experience quite a lot of Canadian whiskey on this channel. This is the Macaloney's Island Collection, the Island Dram Collection, and I'm going to be reviewing all of it. Don't know if I'll do it all in one go, not sure, it'll be on YouTube and TikTok. But this I think will give me a more regular approach to what Macaloney's will be. So there will be more of this, and given the state of the world and everything that's happening with what feels like every country in the world, I'm trying to get hold of more Canadian whiskey. Hopefully that becomes quite an easy thing to do in the UK in the next couple of months to a year. It'd be nice to have a friendly partnership with a country that produces some of the most interesting whiskies in the world right now. But yes, I'm not in love with this. I think it's really cool, and if I tried it at a tasting, it'd certainly attract my attention. But I don't think it's fantastic. This was lent to me by another good friend of the channel, Ray, who is also a customer at the Whisky Shop Manchester. He's lent us other things in the past, loads of really good stuff. But yeah, I don't know if I'm in love with this, but it's a single barrel, so that's okay. I think overall I'd probably give it a 7. The nose is really alluring, but after that I'm not madly in love with it. But that is what you get when you bottle single casks. But thank you all very much for watching. I will see you all next week with maybe something Canadian, maybe something Irish, because I have a lot of Irish whiskey in the house right now. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed that review, and I hope to see more people talking about Canadian whiskey and sampling Canadian whiskey. We should have more of it in the UK, because we did have about 60 years ago. So let's make that a thing if we can. But I will see you all soon. Have a wonderful day. Thelma says goodbye, and I'll see you all again. Thank you.